Hi, welcome to Animinute, the show where I talk about all things animation for a minute. And today I'm actually going to try out a new segment that I didn't come up with, though. A friend of mine came up with it. Anyway, it's called the Animinute Multiminute, and it's kind of funny because it's like multi-minute, which is multimedia, and so it's like I talk about some other things that are kind of in the range of animation, but it gets a little bit off topic, and it also won't be a minute, so it's going to be multi-minutes of multimedia. So yeah, Animinute Multiminute begins now. Alright, today's multimedia... Oh, another thing that you need to know about the multi-minute thing is that it's kind of off the books, like extremely off the books, like no script, no real preparation, just sort of me talking about my feelings straight up on these topics. And so for the first one, I'm going to do one that's actually pretty near and dear to my heart, and that's Spider-Man. Spider-Man is my absolute favorite superhero, period. Like, everything about him, his costume, his origin story, his supporting characters, his world. I've named something Spider-Man related, I've probably seen it. I probably even own it, I've been keeping up with Spider-Verse. I watch even like Ultimate Spider-Man, the TV show. It's not that great. Like I never fall off with Spider-Man. I keep as up to date as I can with the guy. So we'll keep you up to date with Spider-Man. There's no doubt that you are going to come across all this recent controversial news surrounding the Sony email leaks. I still don't know if anything's really been verified, if these are actually real, if it's still all just these rumors, or what's the, because Sony hasn't released an official statement on what's going on. But for those who don't know, pretty much what happened is Sony was hacked and a bunch of emails got out, and the emails sort of, they touch on a ton of things, but right here I'm just sort of focusing on, Spider-Man. I'm not touching any of the David O. Russell stuff. I'm not touching any of the remarks made about Angelina Jolie or any of that other junk. I'm just here to talk about Spider-Man, purely because Sony has Spider-Man, and he's sort of the bedrock for their entire movie section. It's pretty much like that's their biggest movie, period. That's their biggest franchise. It's like the only franchise they really have. So with Spider-Man right now, they've been in talks with Marvel about having him appear in Civil War, and what this means, what Marvel wants, and how they could sort of work out this deal. Reading through some of the emails, it sounds like it could be pretty legitimate. They were talking like, okay, if we let them use Spidey for this, can we also then use Cap for this? Or maybe we could work it in a way where they get to produce the movies, but we get to have our names then there, and then maybe we can have our names on their movies. And it's just like, it was a lot of really cool give and take scenarios being pitched around in the emails, and I thought that was extremely interesting. I was not gonna lie, I was kind of for that. Like, that part of this entire thing seemed to be working out really well. I was like, oh, okay, that seems fair. If you can still do the movie, still make as much money, get a cut of it or whatever. Marvel and Disney can produce the movies, direct them, whatever in that area. But then Disney gets all the merchandising rights, while you guys can do whatever you want with the marketing. Which, I mean, that's kind of what the biggest problem with Amazing Spider-Man 2 is, but more on that later. So that was looking great. I can see that. You work out this tiny deal, and Spider-Man gets to come into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Even if it's just for a little while, maybe permanently. Who cares? He gets to be there. And that was something I always thought was kind of a big possibility. I never really saw it as something that can never happen. There's nothing that happens in Spider-Man's universe as of yet that deters him from being in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. With X-Men, it's pretty much they have their own timeline for events. Magneto assassinating JFK can't happen at the same time as Bucky doing it. So, those pretty much are two different worlds, no matter how you slice it. And I'm kind of for that. I always felt that X-Men should be separate from Marvel anyway, because you can't really run around in a world and be like, we're okay with these metahumans, but these mutants, no, sorry, Bob, those are the bad guys. They're both just people with powers at the end of the day, so what makes one any worse than the other? How would you know who comes apart? This is not what the video is about. The video is still about Spider-Man, and Marvel's deal. And so this was seeming great. I had way back when we had the news that they were working out a way to get the to get the Oscorp Tower from Amazing Spider-Man 1 into the Avengers film. But sort of because of time, they weren't able to fit it in there. And that was kind of like a cool thing. We always knew that Sony and Marvel were playing really nice. There's none like that stuff like the Fantastic Four comic getting canceled, Wolverine suddenly dying, the X-Men just sort of getting pulled back more and more, making room for like the Inhumans and other similar teams. Marvel sort of switching focus to the Guardians. But Spider-Man never fell back. He never left the forefront. X-Men don't get a new cartoon, but Spider-Man's cartoon still leads the pack. So it showed that Marvel and Sony were able to balance out ownership of this character. And so that's why, him making a cameo in the movie and Captain America 3, Civil War, seems like a big possibility. And then more details about the email start to unravel, and this is where it gets extremely sticky and this is where I start to fall off the entire thing. The fact that if this were to go down, instead of simply taking what has already been established in the Tassimverse and just sort of bringing it over, they're planning that if Marvel was to have Spider-Man show up, that they would have it be essentially a new Spider-Man. So we'd have a new actor playing Peter Parker. We'd have basically a new origin story, even though they've made it clear that they don't want to play it out. It'd just be a new guy playing Spider-Man, and it'd be a new Spider-Man who we hadn't seen before. And that is kind of like not something I want to deal with. Not because there's the origin story. I could deal with it playing over and over again. Personally, don't want to see it again. And I get that they're going about in a very they would go about in a very Batman v Superman kind of way, where they'd have it be like, Batman's established. You know who Batman is. We don't need to have a Batman movie for you to get who Batman is. You can just jump right into the Superman movie and be like, well, that's Batman. I pretty much get the gist of it. They were going to do that with Spider-Man, just make him a high schooler, send him out in the field, whatever. But my thing is that I'm just already, I don't think that it's right to reboot Spider-Man again. Even if it's not a full-on reboot, if it's just like a soft reboot, recast type of situation, I don't think it's the right move to make. It's one thing to facelift certain characters. You could change War Machine up a little bit. Hell, you can even change Hulk, and it worked out for the best. But I think to change Spider-Man right now it just wouldn't sit too well with people after what's already transpired. Going from Toby to Andrew to someone else would just be, I think it hurt it damaged the character. It would show that there's something it showed there's something definitely broken about the franchise for it to have to change face so many times. That being said, I was sort of, I'll admit that I have sort of a bias towards like Tassim as it is now. That's sort of, a lot of people older than me at least respect the Raimi films, and I respect the Raimi films too. They sort of ushered in the age of superhero films we're having right now. And I definitely would not want them to cease existing, but their portrayal of Spider-Man is not necessarily a portrayal of Spider-Man I think is the best. It's certainly not my Spider-Man. Basically the way I think it is, it breaks down into sort of like they're sectioned off Spider-Man for people. And so you have the 90s animated series, and that plays right into with the Ditko classic Spider-Man and the Raimi films. All those three sort of like that, the kind of muscular, that Spider-Man is that's the Spider-Man for the 30-year-olds and up crowd. That makes sense for them. But then around when you get in my age range, by the time I was sentient enough to start reading comics, Ultimate Spider-Man was out, and I was used to this scrawny little gangly teenage Spider-Man. And then the Spectacular Spider-Man TV show is, that is my go-to Spider-Man of choice. That's my go-to Spider-Man series. I think it's the best animated adaptation. Hell, I think it's one of the best handlings of that character, period, in any medium. And then to see Andrew Garfield take on the role in The Amazing Spider-Man, the first movie and then the second movie, sort of captured more of what I liked about the Ultimate Universe and the Spectacular Spider-Man TV show, which was sort of like, soft on all the sciencey bits of Spider-Man that was left specifically to the villains. The villains would corrupt themselves with the science, and then his life was mostly filled with balancing romance, schoolwork, and being Spider-Man. That's what I absolutely adored, and that's why I say that I prefer the Amazing Spider-Man series over the Raimi films in every regard, almost. Not every regard. That'd be kind of like the villains in the Raimi films are still better, definitely still better. But definitely, I think that Andrew Garfield taking on Peter Parker was the best thing, and he He's really like second only to Josh Keaton as a Spider-Man. He's great. And so I think what the smartest decision that Marvel could do with this would simply be to just take him, Andrew, put him in the costume, put him next to Cap, put him, because he can. I feel he can bounce off of Robert Downey Jr., Chris Evans, and all the other gang just well enough. He's got the star power, he's got the charisma, he's got everything that it takes to act with these guys. And I say you just put him in there. If you want to ignore the Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2, you don't want to make any mention to Oscorp, Harry, Electro, Gwen, any of the things that have happened in those movies. I understand that. You could just sort of like push it under if you need to for this movie. But just to have him show up and continue to play Spider-Man from point A, from right after Uncle Ben's gone to greater power comes greater responsibility, I think that would be the best move you can make. And then if you want to move forward with the character in that direction, I think this would be the best place. You can do a soft reboot within Cap 3 as opposed to like trying to fix the character like the way they're doing it here. Some more other details about the emails include like the possibility of Disney just doing their own new franchise of Spider-Man movies and Sony just giving it back to them, or Sony also attempting to maybe like scrap their plans for Sinister Six, their female team movie, their Aunt May movie, and just sort of like rebooting Spider-Man again. I'm just like, what the hell are you guys doing? Just kind of back it up maybe, because I don't think that's the right idea. A lot of people think that Sony has not made any good ideas, and I thought they were making very, very conscious ideas up until a point, and I think it's sort of the point that it was the make it or break it point. And that was, I think, that's the Marvel effect. This whole shared universe thing that's going on. The shared universe is a double-edged sword. If you have a universe ripe for the picking, then naturally it'll build in upon itself and it'll become something greater. The X-Men, for example. The X-Men have so many factors that make them the X-Men beyond Captain America, beyond Iron Man. They have, Magneto. They have Shaw. They have all this. They have all these great stories within House of M. All these things that they could tell. All these things you could do with the X-Men. We already got Days of Future Past. We're gonna do Apocalypse. Their X-Men is its own universe. It just has always been inside of Marvel's universe. So taking X-Men and being like, okay, we'll do our own shared universe now. That makes sense to me. Maybe get the rights to Namor, if anybody cares, and bring him in. Do whatever you got to do. Do some X-Men movies. I like it. Go for it. That's always made sense to me. If you ever want to work out anything with Marvel, maybe work out to do like a AVX movie, like Avengers vs. X-Men, because that'd be kind of neat. DC also. DC is its own universe. Naturally, they'd be like, we've always done Batman movies. We've always done Superman movies. Let's just do them together. Why the hell not? Marvel's doing it. Let's just do it too. I'm like, okay, that makes sense. But then there's Spider-Man, and Spider-Man, as it was being set up in the Amazing Spider-Man 1, was just going to be its own solid superhero franchise that sort of, it didn't feel like the other ones. It wasn't brightly colored. It wasn't action-packed. The first movie has 2 action scenes tops compared to whatever the hell was going on in the second movie. But in the first movie, it was setting itself up to be this quieter, more personal, romance-driven, dramatic take on Spider-Man, and that was going to set it apart, and it didn't need a shared universe. You don't need a big universe with all these connecting ties to do that. You just got to tell a story about a kid in Queens. That's all you got to do. That's all and that seems like what they were doing, and then they were just like, okay, they caught one of this Marvel effect. They're like, okay, you can't do these big movies unless it's all taking place in the same universe, so we got to make a Spider-Man universe. Now, had they just waited at least 2 months, and I don't know if Marvel would plan this on purpose. They knew Sony would pull the trigger too fast or something, but right after all of the Sony started announcing their crazy ideas, they were like, we're gonna do Sinister Six, we're gonna do Spider Female movie, we're gonna do Aunt May movie. They just all these things that's not a shared universe. That's just a bunch of junk happening on the same block, and you're gonna do separate movies when these can all just sort of take place with Spider-Man on a day-to-day basis. Marvel did the whole Spider-Verse thing. And all Spider-Verse has done is tell me, why isn't Sony just getting the rights to any of these Spider characters and just making this their universe? Emma Stone, strongest part of the Amazing franchise by far. You get the Spider-Gwen thing going on. There you go. There's your female. That not only do you get everyone's favorite aspect of the films back, you get to do your strong female superhero movie, be the first ones to the punch, because that was your ace in the hole, Sony. That was your secret weapon. You got that, and then you also got like all these other great Spider-Man, Miles. You got all these things to choose from, and you could build a true Spider-Verse. Adapt some of the stories that are going on in Edge of Spider-Verse into standalone films. Maybe draw them together. Like, there's a lot going on there. Bring in Madam Web. Talk about One More Day, maybe, but do it well. Bring Toby back. Hell, do the Raimis as a verse. Just do something with Spider-Man involving the multiverse. Because right now, that is just... Instead of doing... That's what I'm saying. Instead of doing a shared single universe, do a shared collective of universes. That's how you could have made Spider-Man work. Instead, you're trying to trip up and be like, well, I guess we could tell a story about Venom or Aunt May. That's a standalone movie right there. We could do that. I'd see them all, but that's because I'm gonna see all of this stuff regardless. So that covers like the most hot button of the Marvel side of the issues. Is they're just like, we got Spider-Man back. We're gonna axe everything you did, and we're just gonna do it our own way, which. I get them doing that, but at the same time, I kind of wish it didn't have to come to that. There's obviously like some people within the studio and within Marvel who are fond of Garfield's portrayal. Like every time I read Spider-Verse, every issue that comes out, I swear Peter looks more and more like Andrew Garfield. Like his hair, every little detail about him, every little nuance looks more and more like Garfield. So it's like that guy was becoming the Spider-Man to people. He was becoming the quintessential one, and for Marvel to just be like, we're gonna cut ties. I just seem like it's just Marvel smelling themselves, basically being like, we can do anything we want and win, so we're just gonna fuck with you. We're just gonna straight up just mess with you and just do this. We're just gonna axe this guy and we're gonna pick someone better. And even if he's not better, you'll think he's better. He'll be better because we're Marvel. We don't mess up. Edward Norton, whatever he did with the Hulk, forget about it, because here's Mark Ruffalo. We're Marvel. We do it. And then you read more into Sony's emails, and then you know about what's going on. And if this right here happened, then at this point, any point I could try to make in Andrew's favor just falls right off the end. And I just say, Marvel, get the franchise back, reboot the hell out of it. I don't care. Do whatever you want, because it obviously better be better in your hands than the people who would make this kind of decision. So Sony is upset with Andrew Garfield for two specific reasons, actually. The first one being that he came out, finally gave his opinion on the Amazing Spider-Man 2, which is like rare that an actor would do that about his own movie, especially so soon after the movie. Usually, if it's a controversial hot button, they wait till years after, a decade even, and then they'll look back and be like, yeah, I regret doing Garfield or something like that. But with Spider-Man, with Andrew, it was just like, oh yeah, no, I liked the script and everything, but there were essentially too many cooks in the kitchen. There was too much going on in the scripts. There was too much going on with people higher up wanting certain things, the marketing. Like, there was just too much going on, and I get that. There were too many people putting their hands to the project, and that ultimately is what one of the biggest problems with Amazing Spider-Man 2 is. So Sony got upset because he said that. I don't see. I guess I do see why you get upset with. You would want your actor to stand by the work, even if they're not proud of the work. You want them to pretend they are. But that's got to be kudos to Andrew, who is supposedly a Spider-Man fan too, to be like, yeah, this is not the Spider-Man that I thought I was signed on to do. The first one definitely was. That was him and Mark doing Spider-Man the way that they envisioned Spider-Man, and the second movie just wasn't. And for Sony to be upset about that, I don't know. And then it goes on that there was apparently a dinner with higher ups that he was supposed to attend at Sony, and then he sort of just didn't show up. Well, he gave like an hour notice. He was like, okay, I can't make it, and that pissed some people off. So the rumor right now is that he is sort of cut from Amazing Spider-Man 3 anyway. And if that's the case, and if Mark Webb's also apparently gone too, so if that's the case, just don't do it. Like, I mean, you're really gonna, you lose literally the three cards you had in your sleeve. Like, Mark Webb's direction, it some people don't think it's a Sam Raimi, but it definitely has uniqueness. It definitely has uniqueness among the superhero films by being so so romance centric. Mark had a vision. He had clear cut direction, and to lose him, well, that's one thing gone. Andrew Garfield, debatably the best Spider-Man we have. Cut that out of the picture. Okay, what do we got left? Oh, Gwen Stacy. Well, Emma Stone, but he killed her, so yeah, that leaves you with absolutely no redeeming factors for your franchise. So at that point, because you'd be essentially doing what Marvel was going to do anyway in your next movie, why not just let Marvel do it then? Like, because that's pretty much what it's stacked up to, Sony. It's you let Andrew keep his job, keep being Spider-Man, try to fix the verse, maybe do some Spider-Gwen stuff, get Emma Stone back in there, do something to repair the damage that you've done. You can keep making Spider-Man movies because you can come back, you can bounce back from that because you did it with the first movie. You bounce back from Spider-Man 3 with the Amazing Spider-Man 1. Now can you bounce back from the Amazing Spider-Man 2? Well, if you cut all the things that you had going for you, think it's gonna work again like it did when you shit the bed with Raimi's movie. I don't really think so. I think that that's it. 3 strikes, you're out. Now with Marvel on the other hand, Marvel cutting Andrew, well, they would have never taken him. So if it's true that they would have never taken him, regardless of anything, if they would never have taken him, then I'd rather a new Spider-Man be handled by them. If it's going to be Andrew, Sony keep it. If it's not going to be Andrew, Marvel take it. That's sort of like where I come to a conclusion on all this, on all of that Spider-Man talk. And I think that gets all of you up to date as well if you don't know what's going on. So yeah, I can probably go on about this for a long time, and I probably should have written a script or something just to like keep myself from going on too many tangents, because like I said, I really love Spider-Man. He's my favorite hero, and I would have just loved to see where they could have taken the franchise. I'm fully aware of the Amazing Spider-Man 2's problems, but there are certain things in there that I absolutely adore, like the romance, the real focus on the female protagonist in that film, instead of just having her simply be a damsel or simply be like sort of like an accessory to the hero. I like that she was a character in her own right. She's my favorite character in the film, honestly. And those were some of the things that I loved about The Amazing Spider-Man as a series. Just straight up. That's what made it my favorite series of superhero films, period. And now that it's kind of over in the direction Marvel wants to take it, they want to put him back in high school, which I'm a big supporter of, but they want to make the romance a side plot. I get it, at least it's still there. I just, I guess now it's just we play the waiting game. That's all we really can do. And I guess that'll end the first Animinute multi-minute, and it was about Spider-Man. You can let me know what you think. If you want me to do more Spider-Man-centric videos, I could do tons of those, because I could talk for days about Spider-Man. If you want me to do more multi-minutes, I can do more of those. And if you just want me to go back to doing Animates, maybe I could have just done all this in 60 seconds or something. You think that? Well, let me know about it. I guess that's going to be the end of this video. Like, comment, subscribe, and thank you for tuning in.